Good morning. Good morning, one and all. Now, I'm going to do my usual unprofessional sound check with the audience. So please let me know in the chat if I'm just moving my mouth and you can't see or can't hear me. You can probably see me, but you probably can't hear me. I suppose that's the way this works. Welcome to the chat. I'm pleased there's still an audience. I'm slightly worried that I've been losing Graham's audience one by one over this week due to technical problems and a complete lack of talent. I just want to stress something about what Graham does every day for us, all of us. It takes quite a lot of work every morning to get ready for this. And I'm sure Graham is very used to it now, having done it for many years. But this is my first time live streaming, really. And the amount of preparation work that you need to do, the amount of technical work that you need to do is immense. And I think Graham probably treats it as just something that he naturally does every morning. But the other thing that I think is really intense in this process is just trying to work out what to talk about each day. Later on, we're going to go through the newspapers. My process, and I'm sure it's the same as Graham's, is to just read through the news stories, try and work out what the big story of the day is, and then also try and work out what I feel qualified to talk about. And there's quite a lot of subjects I don't feel qualified to have an opinion on. But actually, you know, that process that Graham does every day for this audience, twice a day, quite often, is pretty amazing. And I think we should all have a round of applause for him. Let's have a look at who's in the chat. There is somebody called Graham Hughes Travels. And I am fairly certain that that is somebody that we all know and he's just heard me blowing smoke up his bum. But hello, Graham. There's Fax, there's SG, there's Saz, there's Alan Jackson, there's Paula Thomas, hi. There's Veg Pie, Martin Harrow. Welcome all of you. A few of you earlier on this morning were saying, to be frank, I don't really want to hear anything more about Trump, and I kind of agree with you, but I did look through all the stories today, and they're pretty bleak. You know, the newspapers have actually started picking up on the horrific situation in Gaza, and many of them, as we'll see later, are dealing with that issue finally. And I think, you know, it's, I don't want to go all James O'Brien here, but it's a subject that makes me incredibly emotive, that I feel like I do have some knowledge about, and I certainly have an opinion about. But I don't really want to go there on a Friday morning, to be honest with you, because what's going on there is horrific. And the slow progress of politics around the world to try and do something about the humanitarian crisis that Israel is causing in Gaza is something I don't really want to dwell on too much. I've probably just dwelt on it too much already today. So then I looked around at the Indian trade deal that we did yesterday. Then I looked around at the strike action that starts today, and I tried to deal with some of that yesterday. And that's going to be an ongoing problem for the next 5 days. And I dug around for more stories that I could cover. And the one that came back to me is the Trump story. And I apologize for those of you that are fed up with Trump, but this weekend, the Orange Blancmange is visiting Scotland, and I believe Windsor Castle as well. And we're rolling out thousands and thousands of coppers, and I'm sure we're spending millions of pounds in security and protection for the bag of orange turds to come and visit us and be treated like a fellow monarch by our sausage-fingered king. First super chat of the day. Francis Winrow, thank you very much for the £2. Very much appreciated. If any of you can spare a few quid today, it's obviously the kind of thing that keeps this channel going. So if you can, please donate. If you can't, then make sure you've liked this video, and obviously make sure you subscribe. I don't know where the subscribe button is. Like if you're a seasoned YouTuber, you know exactly where to point, but I don't know. What I do know is that if I point that way, that's you. That's the chat. And if you do a super chat for us, you'll appear in that window. You'll be praised by me and others, and we will be very grateful because Graham is away at the moment and he only had brought a one-way ticket, so he's going to need some of those super chats. Who else is appearing? Pygmalion is in the chat, and Sfax. You think maybe I'm a bit too quiet, Sfax? Can I turn my microphone up a little bit? It is peaking, but actually no, you could be right. Maybe I'll just talk a bit closer to the mic. Let me know if that's a bit better. Okay, so let's have a look at the issue that I did a cartoon for this morning. No, Graham, I'm not going to do a cartoon for you every morning for your thumbnail, but this one I'd actually got all the characters in place. And it's kind of about a conspiracy theory that I think is real. Obviously, the Epstein files, there is a conspiracy there. There's a paedophile ring, probably one of the most notorious in the world in the last few years. It's not the one with Hillary Clinton and Bill Gates at its head, although the name Clinton and Gates are possibly connected to this story. And I don't really want to dwell into the details or go into the details on whether Trump is in the Epstein files. He is. Whether Trump is engaged in some of the criminality. In my personal opinion, he may be. Legal underwriter there, because I don't want to be sued for $10 billion. You'd have to give us some serious super chats if that happens. But the interesting thing for me is the power game that's going on at the moment. The war of revenge that I think is happening quietly behind the scenes in a sort of tin hat kind of way. In that there are some elites of the media, old media and new media, who seem to be maneuvering around this story and capitalizing on where that story is taking Donald Trump and his future. I'll interrupt myself for Yuri. Thank you, Yuri. Urine infection, which I've only just worked out what that actually means. Like, call me slow, but urinary infection. Thank you very much for the £5 super chat. I'm off to go and take a massive dump in the 18th hole of the Tangerine Twats golf course. Yeah, great. I mean, I don't know what kind of protest there'll be. I think there's a huge police presence to prevent Donald Trump even seeing the will of the British people. But, yeah, you know, anything you can do to make a noise that Donald Trump is not welcome in this country, do it. If you're in Scotland, you have our full support for what you do. So let's look at what's happening with the Wall Street Journal story. Last Friday, the Rupert Murdoch owned Wall Street Journal, one of the few papers, I guess, that he owns, like the Times, where he has a serious journalistic voice. Whatever we think of Rupert Murdoch, and I'm sure all of us have a strong opinion about this guy, Rupert Murdoch, he's a newspaper man. He's he does value journalism. Obviously, he uses it for his own benefits, largely, and for his own political influence. And there's a lot of examples of that happening in the past. But Murdoch does actually own a few newspapers of note, as well as some scumbag publications that we'll probably cover in the paper section later. But last Friday, the Wall Street Journal dropped a story about a birthday letter, a bawdy birthday letter that Donald Trump sent to Jeffrey Epstein, including a nude drawing, which Trump denied he'd ever drawn anything, and then obviously was immediately proved wrong because he'd donated a number of his terrible, terrible childish sketches to charity over the years in New York, and the style is very much his. SG, thank you for the £2. Very much appreciated. I hope Led by Donkeys have a projection planned. Let's hope so. I did see that there is a crowdfunder campaign to have posters put up in bus stops and big poster sites with pictures of Trump with Epstein all over Scotland and around Slough and Windsor. So if you can find that, if anyone can find the link to that and stick it in the chat, that would be great, because I can't multitask like that. Thank you very much, SG, for the contribution there. Yeah, so the Wall Street Journal publishes this story, which is not really surprising to anyone. We all know Trump is involved with Epstein. By his own admission, they were friends for 15 years. They lived a few doors away from each other in Florida, and many of the victims of Epstein were recruited from Mar-a-Lago. This is all evidenced in court and all backed up by detail. So the Wall Street Journal starting to release snippets of extra stories around the Epstein files is interesting. And I think what Murdoch and Trump and to some extent some of the other players in this game are very good at is picking up on what the main story might be, particularly with the MAGA base. Trump has traditionally obviously succeeded incredibly since 2015 by reading the minds of these people and then shaping their minds as well. Murdoch has made a career of doing that, a very long and wrinkly career of trying to second guess and then shape and form and use a national narrative from a particular political point of view. So why is the Wall Street Journal leaking these stories? Well, there's been a run-up to this. Trump has obviously encouraged the Epstein file conspiracy theory. I think probably very foolishly during the campaign. He kept raising it, and it was brought up by a number of his supporters, many of whom now work in his cabinet. Kash Patel in particular, heading up the FBI, Tulsi Gabbard, etc. People who in the past have called for Epstein's files to all be released in transparency, and the elites involved, including Bill Clinton and Bill Gates, to be exposed. Now, I just want to put this on the record. This is not, for me, a progressive or a Democrat versus Republican story. This is a story about paedophilia. This is a story with real victims. This is a story with girls, young girls, who have been abused by powerful elite men. Many of these women very vulnerable. And we should never diminish the fact that people have committed suicide as a result of this story. Epstein, fine. He can commit suicide as many times as he wants or be murdered as many times as he wants, whatever the current version of that story is. But the victims, some of the victims, in particular, Prince Andrew's alleged victim, and I'm going to say alleged just for legal reasons, but we all know the truth of that story. And that shouldn't be forgotten. But we're now starting to reveal more and more of this story through the Wall Street Journal, who very much seems to be controlling the way this story is playing out. And Trump is flailing to try and divert everyone's attention from that story. But one of the interesting things, in the cartoon, I put a picture of J.D. Vance standing behind Rupert Murdoch, because when we start to look at this as a conspiracy theory, we can start to look, and I'll look at this in a minute, in terms of the motivation of some of the main players. But one of the other players involved in this is J.D. Vance. So J.D. Vance took a trip 2 weeks ago. In fact, sorry, in June, 4 or 5 weeks ago. And he visited the ranch of Rupert Murdoch, and he had a meeting with Lachlan Murdoch, who is the current successor to Rupert Murdoch. I'm sure that could all change. Anyone that's seen Succession will see that Lachlan isn't definitely going to be taking that role. But J.D. Vance, who's been very quiet, really, about the whole Epstein files story, took a visit to go and see Mr. Murdoch. It's not publicly available information as to what they were talking about, what the meeting was about. But ultimately, why did he go and see the Murdochs? And why, subsequently, 2 weeks later, do we get the Wall Street Journal story? And then Vance's response to that story was to say, well, this is not what I would expect of Donald Trump. I don't imagine that he sent this letter. And if the Wall Street Journal has evidence to prove this letter and to prove Donald Trump's involvement, then they should release it or shut up. Now, that's not a complete denial of the story, is it? That's Vance kind of egging on the Wall Street Journal to publish what information they've got. And that feels a little bit coordinated to me. And then there's another factor in all of this, which is Elon Musk. Now, Musk obviously has got good reasons to seek revenge on Donald Trump at the moment. They're having a very public on and off spat. But again, back in June, Musk used his departure from the White House to tweet that that Trump was definitely in the Epstein files. Now, the timing of that and J.D. Vance's visit to Murdoch's ranch seems to me incredibly convenient. It could just be a coincidence. I'm just asking questions, as the conspiracy theorists say. I think maybe we should start to turn this channel more into a left-wing conspiracy channel, and start to look at some of the genuinely real conspiracies that are out there with the elites of the world. Let me stress one thing I just want to go back to the Epstein story. If there are Democrats involved in that, if there are famous journalists involved in that, who we believe are on our team, then they should go to jail just as much as anyone else for their involvement in all of this. This isn't just about Trump. This is about the elites on that list. And one of the things the White House is saying at the moment is that they are protecting certain people that are on that list. Now, that's not going to play well with Trump's base. That's just not going to work, because the one thing about the MAGA movement and the QAnon movement, which led to it, and the Tea Party movement before that, is a complete lack of trust in government. And just because the government happens to have a MAGA hat on, it doesn't mean that their trust has increased. In fact, it's become far more sinister in terms of the way MAGA are treating the spokespeople, at least. Maybe not yet quite Trump, but certainly the spokespeople. So if we look at the motivation of some of these players, why might they be turning? Why would Murdoch, whose Fox TV network in the States really grew with Donald Trump's popularity, or grew Donald Trump's popularity, whichever way you look at it. Their backing in 2015 or before for Donald Trump, and him being pretty much reluctantly the chosen leader. There's much evidence that Rupert Murdoch was not a Trump fan before the 2016 election, and reluctantly was brought to support the MAGA movement for financial reasons, to keep the Fox network afloat, because the audience obviously wanted Trump. So, why would Murdoch suddenly turn on Trump? Well, Murdoch has a track record of supporting politicians in a big way, and then dropping them like a stone when they are no longer helping his businesses, or he finds some ideological reason to part from them. So you look at Margaret Thatcher. Murdoch was her biggest fan boy for a long time, and claimed that they won the election a number of times for Margaret Thatcher, and their support for the Falklands, etc. Now, it just so happens that Margaret Thatcher unrestricted media in the UK, and the main beneficiary of that was Sky Television, and that suited Rupert Murdoch. But towards the end, when it became politically expedient not to be supporting Margaret Thatcher or the Tory party, he switched his allegiances quite strongly to Tony Blair, and again claimed that he won the election for Tony Blair. It's arguable whether he did or not, but the Sun's support for Tony Blair was certainly a major factor, and it's something that the current Labour government tried to do themselves and have failed dismally at, because their comms are awful, and we know that. So Murdoch has a track record of doing this, and in Australia, which is a bit less reported, but famously Gough Whitlam, Rupert Murdoch supported him, and then he turned on that on the Labour Prime Minister in the 1970s when it suited his business interests. Kevin Rudd waged a sustained media campaign against Labour PM Kevin Rudd, and he contributed to his downfall. Murdoch sees himself very much as a kingmaker. I think there's a quote, and I'll probably misquote it, but Murdoch once said that he didn't like the EU because they didn't read his newspapers, and he had no influence on the politics of the EU because of the language barrier, which is why his political base is in Australia, the UK, and America predominantly. So Murdoch's shift against Trump probably is two things in my mind. One is, I think it's a reflection of MAGA's wobble over Donald Trump and the Epstein files in particular. And I think he can see that there is a chink in the armor of his chosen candidate. Let's face it, it was his chosen candidate in the end that won, and Fox played a huge part in that. And then it's about Fox. Personally, I think this comes down to the Dominion voting machines issue. That cost Murdoch $787 million in settlements. And by his own depositions and those of Tucker Carlson and various other players in the Fox network, None of them believed that the Dominion story was true. All of them thought that Trump was being dangerous, and none of them dare say it. Absolutely none of them came out in public and said it, but they did have to say it in court when they were under oath. So that's got to hurt. Now, look, Murdoch is a very rich guy. $787 million is not that much to deal with, although he does have shareholders and he has to answer to them for his own decisions. So it's still a big whack, you know. There's a lot of Sky Television and movies that meant he couldn't make. There's a lot of investment he couldn't make into other newspapers and into television channels as a result of Trump's actions, largely. And that's got to hurt a bit, particularly when you didn't agree with the story that brought that bill upon him. And now Trump is currently threatening to sue, or is suing, Murdoch for $10 billion as a result of this Wall Street Journal story. That tells me that the Wall Street Journal has all the facts it needs, that Murdoch is confident that they have more information and that they're not afraid of going to court. Whatever we say about Murdoch on the Wall Street Journal, they absolutely know how to work with the court system. They've been taken there enough times. And I don't think that they can't make this story hold up in this sense. I just want to say hi to Graham's mum, who appears to be in the chat, looking at Graham's comments. Hello, Graham's mum. This is your surrogate son, Mike, standing in for Graham for the next few days. All right, so we've got Murdoch. Murdoch has got a quiet, stewing revenge, ready to take down Trump when he sees the time is right. And we don't know what business arrangements might be affected recently. Maybe the tariffs are even affecting him. So then you've got to look at Vance. Why would Vance be tying himself to Rupert Murdoch by visiting him and Lachlan just before this story breaks? Vance has definitely been exposed to the Epstein files. He knows exactly what's in them. He was briefed by the DOJ at the same time as Donald Trump. It's possible Musk was in the room at the same time. Let's just shelve that one for a moment. So Vance has got information, maybe, that he can provide to Murdoch. It's arguable, just to give a balance, that Vance was going to see Murdoch to try and stop the story from happening. That seems slightly odd, because you'd have thought Murdoch was on side all the way through that, and Trump could just pick up the phone and make that phone call. So that kind of demonstrates that if that's the case, if Vance was going there to try and squash the story, then that means Trump's relationship with Murdoch is nowhere near as close as it used to be. Part of the conspiracy theory here, then, is that Vance was actually visiting Murdoch to encourage the story to get out there and work a strategy for how it would be handled. And his behavior since, his quietness about this story, his prodding the Wall Street Journal to come out and reveal its information, is, conspiratorially interesting, I think. And Vance is no fan of Trump. We know that. In his heart of hearts, he just wants to grab power and authority in any means that he can. He described Donald Trump as America's Hitler. And then he takes the dollar and becomes the vice president. We know that Peter Thiel, and to some extent Peter Thiel's sidekick Elon Musk, funded Vance to a great extent. Andrew AB, thank you for the £10. Loving this glow up, Graham. I'm kind of hoping that means you think this is just makeup, and I'm going to peel off my prosthetics at some point, reveal my Liverpool accent, and reveal that Graham's been here all the time, just trying to completely change his presentation. But it could also be that there's a lot of people loving Graham in the chat. So let's just get back to, thank you very much, Andrew AB, very much appreciated. So let's get back to my deep and dark conspiracy theory, talking about Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and the tech oligarchs, or broligarchs. These guys have got a real interest in an authoritarian government led by multi-billionaires. And Peter Thiel has made no bones about the fact that he is more right-wing probably than Hitler, that he thinks our National Health Service, for example, is making everybody sick and it should be abolished. Just so happens that Keir Starmer is about to give him a huge contract to run the software for the NHS, as we discussed yesterday, and that can't be good news. Peter Thiel is backing J.D. Vance. It's argued that the reason J.D. Vance was on the ticket as the vice president was Elon Musk's support for Donald Trump and his suggestion that Vance would be the right candidate. So if we start thinking that Trump was, certainly the second time around, was a useful idiot for these oligarchs, for Peter Thiel in particular, and for Elon Musk, and for Rupert Murdoch to some extent, then maybe his usefulness is starting to run out. The tariffs are affecting Thiel and Musk's businesses. The removal of the EV subsidies is definitely affecting Musk, and also his very public departure from the White House when he didn't finish his big project, which was never really started in any sensible way either, basically. So we have a number of characters. We have a king in waiting in J.D. Vance. We can argue the toss as to whether that's going to be a good thing, but he doesn't have to be voted for the next 3 years. So he could actually get his feet under the table and make some of the changes that MAGA wants, including releasing all of the Epstein files, which makes perfect sense when you think about this slow drip of the story from the Wall Street Journal. The one person that could benefit enormously from that story coming out in all of its gory and horrible detail is J.D. Vance, because he can just release all of those files as soon as he becomes president. Chris C., thank you for the £5 super chat. Very much appreciated. How is a convicted criminal being allowed entry into the UK is beyond me. Anyone else would be denied entry. That's very true. I'm sure he doesn't have to fill out a little form on Air Force One to be permitted into this country. I think it's despicable that we invited him. At the time, I sort of went along with the idea that, well, what can we do? It's one of the soft powers that we definitely have over Trump, because the guy's an idiot and he thinks visiting people with crowns makes him royalty himself. I get all of that argument. I get why Keir Starmer did it, but I think it makes us look like a bunch of fucking weak arseholes to be welcoming that blancmange into our country. And I really do hope that the British people do what they're good at and, stand up to this guy and find a way to demonstrate to him that we do not approve. I kind of hope that the king does the same thing. You know, his mother famously would wear a particular hat of particular colours that was then interpreted in some way, shape or form. And I'm fairly certain that Charles is going to come up with some devious plan to wear a very inappropriate medal at the right time to express his disdain for the man. But you never know. King Charles hangs out with the monarchy of Saudi Arabia on a regular basis, and the UAE. We quite like dictators, our monarchy does. I think they kind of hanker for it themselves sometimes. Anyway, back to our conspiracy theory. Thanks, Chris C., for the super chat. So we've got Murdoch, who wants to seek revenge for an $800 million humiliation. He also lost Tucker Carlson, and his figures took a dive for that. And Tucker Carlson is kind of on the side of this Murdoch, Vance, Musk, Wall Street Journal conspiracy around the Epstein files. We've got Musk, who's bitter and has a very good track record of calling people paedophiles when they're not. So, why would he not call a paedophile in this situation? And you've got Musk and Thiel's money to support this argument. And you've got Rupert Murdoch, who wants to be the kingmaker, and Lachlan Murdoch in particular, who wants to make his first big political play before he takes over from his father, because we've got to hope that things tend to happen in threes. And we lost Ozzy Osbourne this week. We lost Hulk Hogan this week. One of these players, on this list, maybe some of the older ones, maybe one of the two older ones, could be the third. Who knows? You can only hope. But look, this Epstein story, I don't know. Is it going to bring down Trump? There's a lot of arguments that say that it isn't going to be the story that brings down Trump. The slow drip, drip, drip of this story will break the trust in Trump that his base has got, which will allow another story to take its place at some point in time. With Trump, that could be anything. He has flailed around this week trying to find stories to combat this one. I think we're only a few days away from him denying the moon landings and declaring that Area 51 is a housing estate for alien life forms, and he'll reveal pictures that are AI generated, I'm sure, at the weekend that tell us that. He's not averse to using AI in exactly the way we'd all hate AI to be used. So I can see that happening. However, personally, I think this story is designed by Murdoch to run and run. I think it's a game to try and get Vance in power. And I think every single player in this action has a track record of switching sides when it suits them for power and swapping their allegiances in order to beat down opposition. Trump is the master of that normally. Trump has made an entire career of lying and switching allegiances. You know, the guy was a Democrat for a while when it suits him. He has a contempt for his own supporters. That's starting to come out dramatically now. You could almost see Trump switching to the Democrats because they don't appear to have a decent candidate at the moment. I wouldn't put it past him to stand as a Democrat at the next election if he's still alive. But he's losing the power base, the money that got him into this election through Thiel and his various supporters in that space, and the power and money that Murdoch can influence. Does that mean that Fox starts to change? From all reports, Fox News is not really covering the Epstein story at all. Maybe in the media section, maybe a little bit in the business section, and maybe to have a go at the Wall Street Journal, its own sister paper. But yeah, you know, it's only a matter of time. This story is being tested out in the Wall Street Journal. It's being tested out in the mainstream media and online. And I think Murdoch must be sitting there going, this is going to plan. And the fact that Trump is flailing around trying to find a story that can actually divert everyone's attention from it, particularly the MAGA crowd, is demonstrating that it might well be working. Now, am I getting to a point where I'm buffering again? Vendetta. Joanna Hammond says not here, so maybe that's just you, Vendetta. SG, thank you for the £5 super chat. The royal banquet should consist of every known flavour of tacos. Yeah, brilliant. That would be perfect, wouldn't it? I think I'm not sure when the royal banquet is. Is it Monday? So yeah, Taco Monday. Ideally, it should be on Tuesday, shouldn't it? Taco Tuesday. So listen, what do we think? I've not been paying attention to the chat while I tried to monologue you there. But is this going to be the demise of the useless idiot? Or useful idiot, sorry? Or is Trump actually going to find a way to win this one? And I wouldn't put it past him. He's perfectly capable of doing that. So, you know, if Trump wins, what are the implications? Does that put Thiel and Musk and Murdoch even in their place for the next 3 years? And that could be an incredibly dangerous situation. Personally, I think either way, we're in an incredibly dangerous situation. The phrase, the enemy of my enemy is definitely still my enemy, is very true in the case of Vance and the people behind Vance. I think there is a more sinister Project 2025 oligarchy, which is waiting in the wings to take over America. And I think that is a more worrying thing than Trump and his incompetent idiots staying in command of the American government. So let's go and have a look at what's going on in the chat. A lot of you mentioning the South Park episode yesterday. I did consider just focusing on that today because I could have just played it to you and then we could have had a laugh together. I kind of totally love what they've done. It's a bold approach because they're also under the CBS financial banner. So this is kind of in retaliation for what's just gone on with the Stephen Colbert late night show. And they're demonstrating their support. And it's really interesting to see how media brands like South Park, like Colbert, like all the other late night shows that have come out to support Colbert on this, are challenging CBS and their decision. They've already caved, and they're weak-willed executives. So, you know, they're screwed one way or the other because Trump is going to have no loyalty to them for what they've done. He will just keep milking that cow for as long as he can. And Skydance are going to find themselves in that position pretty soon once they buy it. But South Park and Colbert, I think in the media environment that we exist in nowadays, probably stand a really good chance of creating a separate fan base. I was reading the other day that there are, and there are always rumours like this, but there are rumours that Colbert may be considering a political run in 2029. That would be really interesting. I think kind of a repeat of the Zelensky story, where a comedian who pretended to be a Republican runs as a Democrat, maybe, is quite an interesting approach. But yeah, well done to the South Park guys. I watched most of the episode this morning, and it's funny as well. South Park's not always funny, but they did manage to make it hugely funny and very timely as well. Amazing that they can turn those things around so quickly as well, unless they've just been sitting on it for a while, because it was very up to date as well. So who have we got? I don't know if it was an editorial decision. Earliest article. What are we referring to there? Tumpy's like Teflon, says Chris C. No matter what dirt is thrown at him, it will not stick. I'm not so sure. I think some of the testimony, I was watching The Rest is Politics USA last night, and they were reading out some of the testimony from the Ghislaine Maxwell case of the victims. And I'm not going to pretend to quote them directly, but there was some incredibly disturbing testimony in there from 12, 13, 14-year-old girls at the time who testified to what Epstein had done. I think if any of that gets pinned on Trump, I'm not entirely sure that he can survive that, because of the Christian vote that he attracts and supports, and the MAGA conspiracy theorists who are looking for paedophiles under every rock they can find. So I kind of think there's something in those files, genuinely something in those files, that Trump really doesn't want it to get out there. If it was just, I went to a few parties, there were some pretty young girls there basically then, and here's some pictures. Well, there's plenty of that evidence out there already, so he could ride that one out, definitely. I think there's something more sinister in there. And I do think if Vance and Musk have copies of it, then, maybe that's going to get out there and cause those problems. Sfax. Oh no, don't compare Zelensky with Colbert. I watched both and they're not the same. It's like calling any female politician a new Thatcher. Well, I'm not sure what your take is on that, Sfax, whether that means Colbert isn't a Zelensky or Zelensky isn't a Colbert, whichever way around. I don't know. I am full of admiration for what Zelensky achieved in Ukraine, from switching from a major TV star in Ukraine and in Russia, and a satirical comedian who then makes a film about a teacher becoming president because of social media, and then becomes president. Arguably, if I didn't agree necessarily with his political view or his stance on the war in particular, then if he was a right-wing person doing that, I'd probably be against it. So, who knows? Let's face it. Donald Trump is a entertainment TV star, not a successful businessman. He's an entertainment TV star who was created by an English producer for The Apprentice, and the character of this successful businessman was created and very popular for 10 years before he took a run at the White House. So, we live in a world where, probably since Ronald Reagan, maybe, where movie stars, television stars, celebrities, and, let's face it, the next phase is probably Instagram influencers and TikTokers stand a chance at running for president just because they're so well known. And name recognition is such a huge thing in a country of 350 million people. Oh, look, welcome to the chat, Bowler Hat Man. Hi, Ollie, how are you? If you want something to talk about, crazy council meeting at the Warwickshire, 19-year-old leader and 190k unfunded spending on political officers. Yeah, that's a great story. I saw your coverage of that and some others on YouTube recently. What the fuck is going on in Warwickshire? The leader of the council is a 19-year-old, and his first action is to seek £190,000 funding for him to have a full-time political advisor. If the leader of the council, a member of the Reform Party who was elected into that position, needs political advisors, then obviously he's a paper candidate. And a 19-year-old that, look, I'm not knocking 19-year-olds. We had a conversation about 16 and 17-year-olds being able to vote. But honestly, if any company, including Tesla, appointed a 19-year-old as their chief executive, you would ask some serious questions about their life experience and work experience in order to be able to manage the kind of complexities that a council with a budget of, I don't know, Ollie, you tell me how much, basically, but I'm guessing millions and millions of pounds, all of it spent on useful and important services for local people, how that 19-year-old is going to make decisions. Well, it turns out he's going to pay somebody, maybe one of his friends, maybe Nigel Farage, £190,000 to tell him what to do. The voters of Warwickshire are supposed to be telling that guy what to do. And I'm amazed that there aren't protests outside the town hall instead of the idiots protesting outside hotels in Epping at the moment. It is not the immigrants' fault. It's the politicians' fault. If you want to protest, go and protest the politicians. I don't even mind if you go and protest about immigration, but go to where the politicians are that you feel are responsible for that. Go and complain to them. And in this case, go to the council offices and protest. Every day, if you live in Warwickshire, you should not have a 19-year-old inexperienced idiot in charge of your local council. Thank you, Ollie. You just managed to wind me up more than Donald Trump does. I am going to, just because I don't appear to be buffering, and technically I'm still capable of doing this, I'm going to go and have a look at the newspapers today, because most of them, it won't surprise you, are not really covering the story that I decided to cover. So let's have a look at what the newspapers are talking about today. So first up, we've got the Daily Fail. It's talking about, at the top there, slimming pills. Munjaro's left me so hooked on losing weight, I've become bulimic. I think, listen, I totally appreciate that there are a number of people that have benefited enormously from taking these new slimming pills. I know people personally who are using them and are gaining a huge amount of confidence in their life from losing weight that they have struggled with all of their life. And in fact, I have a member of my family who is diabetic and is considering taking the drug in order to help moderate his weight issues. But I am worried about those drugs and the potential side effects that we don't know about yet. And some of those may well be things like eating disorders. And I have some experience in my life of eating disorders, not for me, but for members of my family. And they're not good, and we don't need to be encouraging them in any way. So some research needs to be done there, obviously. But they lead with the story that Wes Streeting won't cave in to militant doctors. Now, good on you, Wes. I swear that if we told Wes that if you paid the doctors enough money, they would be able to guard the women's toilets from trans people getting in, then he would pay them their pay rise immediately. But Wes is very happy. I was talking to one of my nurses the other day, and we were talking about the communications issues that I addressed yesterday. And she said, well, maybe if you write to Wes, he can do something about it. And I said, yeah, well, as long as he can get a headline out of it and it's something to do with trans people. And she laughed and said, please don't quote me on that. And I've just quoted her. So, yeah, there you go. Doctors' strike will run and run for the next few days and weeks. I'd like to stress that I am this morning paying tribute to Mr. Modi after his visit to the UK there. Lovely picture of him with sausage fingers. But I do admire his waistcoats. I actually buy my waistcoats from India. So hopefully they'll be a bit cheaper. Now we've got no tariffs on waistcoats and whiskey. But the Times there, top story there, Frank Skinner's finally getting married. Yay! Good news at last. I don't know why that's even news. But the PM... strikes pose a threat to the NHS as we know it. The Labour Party is arguing with trade unions about the Labour Party's invention, the NHS. I don't know what Starmer's actually saying about this, but, you know, come on, sort this out. Beer and sandwiches in number 10, guys. You have to sort this out. You don't need to make this a story. And for God's sake, stop trying to out-Farage in these bloody newspapers. Pretty fed up with it. France there is all set to recognise the state of Palestine. And that, I think, is part of a very slow movement on the Gaza issue and the Israel issue for Europe to start taking a bit more of a lead collectively We saw David Lammy and 28 other countries. Look, I get it. It's maybe not enough. We should be doing more. We certainly shouldn't be supporting their arms practices. But yeah, maybe there's some incredibly slow movement. That will not stop tens of thousands of Palestinians, particularly children, from dying of starvation. There are current reports at the moment, and I think we'll cover these in another newspaper story, but there are reports of, finally maybe this will get through. Finally, maybe this is why it's starting to appear in the newspapers and on television, from the Palestinians' perspective much more. There are reports from the UN that journalists and UN staff are starving to death in Palestine. That's nothing because they're voluntarily there, and they can get out easily, I imagine. But by staying there, they are also running short of food. Now that means that those people are privileged in that situation, I guess, and there are kids out there being shot by drones, being bombed on their way to try and get food, and that's disgusting and just shouldn't be happening. The Daily Express, who've actually been doing quite a good job of leading on the Gaza story, still have Gaza at the top of the paper there, plus also a UK holiday for £15. I'm not sure I'd want to go on that holiday, but many people will. And they lead on doctors' 5-day strike is a threat to lives. It's always presented that way, and in the end, I think only a handful of people could be directly associated with any of the recent strikes. There is provision to make sure that these things are covered, and please, I don't want anybody to be hurt in this process, but there will be a provision for people, and this is really just pontificating by millionaires to keep their taxes low, is my guess. But also there, Kelly from the Lionesses, with the start of the build-up now towards Sunday's Euro final, where the Lionesses, let's hope, will win against Spain. Although, in my family, because I have a Spanglish grandson who lives in Madrid, so a chunk of my own personal family live in Madrid, my son and my daughter-in-law and my grandson. So it's a win-win situation for me. I don't really mind if Spain or England win, although I'd really secretly like England to win because a bit of jingoism with sport is perfectly reasonable. The Guardian, let the aid in, pleads UN chief as even his staff faint from hunger in Gaza. There's that story about UN staff struggling to get food themselves. This is disgusting. Look, this shouldn't be as it is with the invention of the Your Party. It's not called the Your Party. What's it called? It's called the My Party. It's not the My Party, it's the Our Party. Arse Party. I don't know what it is. And it's mentioned down in the bottom corner there, Corbyn and Sultana set date for the party's launch, but not necessarily the name, because they've taken everything they learnt from the Labour Party and made it all worse, including comms. But Gaza and Palestine have been a major issue within the Labour Party, and I'm sure there are differing views in the chat, and I respect all of those views. But it should not be a political issue within a party or even a political issue amongst parties. This is a humanitarian issue, and the aggressor in this situation has the ability to be humanitarian, and they are not. And that needs to be stopped. And also, Streeting urges doctors not to join BMA strike. I'm sure that will be very effective, considering it was a 96% vote by doctors to join the strike until January 2026. So the paper recognises that the UK is ready to recognise Palestinian state in a peace deal. So you've got the French hinting that they're ready to recognise the Palestinian state, and now with this story, the UK. So there's a political or a diplomatic movement here towards that, and it's highly possible that the UK and France will lead Europe into promoting that. And whether that works or not, I don't know, because it all relies on Trump. Everything does. They also mention, first newspaper I think on the front page to mention Hulk Hogan's demise. Famous Trump supporting Hulk Hogan, who towards the end wasn't even able to tear his shirts open. We shouldn't do jokes, but he did make himself a bit of a joke character, certainly towards the end. So rest in peace, Hulk. I know Wayne in particular is very upset to lose a WWE superhero, but he should have stuck to wrestling, is my argument. Let's have a look at the Mirror. Hulk Hogan up on the top there. More £15 holidays. It's worth noting that the Mirror and the Express, two extremes really politically, are both owned by the same newspaper and giving away the same holidays here. And now they lead on Gaza, and Britain must do more. Government told to act now to help stop starvation and slaughter. And I do think it's time we did something about that. The Star, they lead with Hulk Hogan. The Incredible Hulk, Hulk Hogan, 1953 to 2025. And then a lovely fat picture of, here's Donny in the top left there. So we're leading up to a weekend of the Euro finals on Sunday and Donald Trump's arrival. God, if we win, what if the Lionesses win and Donald Trump turns up? Or Donald Trump... I'm sorry, Wayne, I got this wrong. I understood from our internal chat group that you were a massive Hulk Hogan fan. In fact, possibly his number one fan. That was what I was led to believe, Wayne. And how I deduced that, Wayne, is that you expressed your love and affection for him and your sadness at his demise. But Wayne says to me, "Fuck off, Mike. Geezer was a racist twat." And once again, Wayne has contributed to the idea that I've now got a swear jar. So if anyone wants to just pile in with a last-minute super chat to help me pay YouTube for the vociferous swearing, then please do. I'm just going to say it was Wayne's fault. That's all. I was just reading a message, as Mr. O'Brien said the other day. So let's look at the Sun. Another Rupert Murdoch paper. Is he leading with the Epstein scandal? No, of course he's not. He's leading with the fact that migrant gangs with free hotel rooms shoplift from top stores. They're taking a liberty. A Gucci, Prada, John Lewis's. Murdoch and Murdoch's papers have agendas. This is one of their long-running agendas. It's the narrative that led to Brexit, that led to Trump, and we all know this. I don't need to dwell on this story in particular, basically, but there you go. The Telegraph, what bonkers rubbish are they talking about now? Just because they have nice fonts at the Telegraph and a reasonably nice layout for their newspaper doesn't mean they're a serious newspaper. They're not. They have a picture of a attractive woman, because that's all they ever seem to find, but surrounded in blur there by what looks to me like an awful lot of thugs, who is complaining about migrants in Epping and trying to protect her family. My question is how she spent all day not protecting her family from the violent thugs behind her. And also a story about farmers whinging about inheritance tax. I am sure... but actually, more than 6,000 agricultural, forestry and fishery businesses shut in a year. I don't know that story. We'll dig into it maybe. Paul Ewan, thank you for your contribution to the swear jar, £1.99. Hogan was a C unit. That's for the fund there. I'm sure Wayne, Hulk Hogan's biggest fan, is very happy that we're paying his fines. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. Wayne says, yes, he was. He grassed up Jesse Ventura for trying to form a union in 1983. Didn't he shut down an online newspaper as well? Wasn't it Hogan that did that? Somebody in the chat tell me this. I'm fairly certain there was a story about Hogan suing an online newspaper group and them going into receivership as a result. Somebody can help me with that vague memory. Financial Times leads with a Musk story. Tesla shares tumble. I think they fell by 37% since December. And that's probably fuel to why I think Musk is in a conspiracy to bring down Trump and get revenge. This EV mandate is going to definitely cause problems for Tesla, but also Elon Musk is causing his own problems for Tesla, isn't he? And finally, I think the Metro, mainly because I'm not sure it publishes at the weekend, leads with the Lionesses, with Serena, the hero of the team until maybe Sunday afternoon, and all of the amazing women in that team, who, to me, I'm not a big football fan, but I'm a big women's football fan, and I'm a big Lionesses fan. I love the sound of that crowd. I love the fact that it sounds like a far more than 50% female audience in the stadiums. I love the attitude of those players, the team spirit of those players, and the management skills of Serena. And I think she should get jointly the job of managing the men's and women's team. There's controversy for you. So that's the newspapers. That brings us up to 9:56. And if I was a high-quality broadcaster, I'd be showing you a picture instead of a blank screen. But I would be starting my wrap-up today, and because I'm going to close this at 10 o'clock before I start buffering. Wayne is taking over the chat as usual. What can I do? Wayne says, I'll slap the granny out of you if you keep mugging me off. I'll put more than a camera up your dirt box. And see, this is the thing where Wayne is one of the most erudite and interesting and intellectual people that I've had the pleasure of meeting while being involved in Politics Social. But very often he becomes what I can only describe as one of the worst ambassadors for Essex boys. And if you want to know why the men of Epping are wandering the streets looking for fights with police officers, I give you Wayne. Who else is in the chat when Wayne lets them talk? Reverend Kathy, very, very difficult, but more honest than the fake eulogy. Better raise an honest glass to a bastard than to weep over a fake saint. Yeah, that's true. You know, the guy was incredibly flawed, Hulk Hogan. He built a career out of ripping his shirts open, and that's not a bad thing, I guess. And I think he's done a lot less harm than some of the people that we've been talking about today. Thank God he never ran for president, eh? Although in America, that would make perfect sense. Wayne, typical Hogan fan. All talk, Mike. Yeah, thank you, Walter Howison. Absolutely. Wayne's all talk. I don't think he would stick anything up my bumhole, let alone a camera. Yeah, we're all flawed, Mr. Tusk 27. Totally. You know, I used to think I've always wanted to be more involved in politics than just sniding from the side and drawing cartoons about it. And I've always thought that my flaws and past errors would in my life would make me an inappropriate candidate for that kind of work. But it turns out, when you look at the crop that run us in this decade, that it's an incredibly low bar to get involved in politics. So anyone out there that feels that they can suffer the slings and arrows should actually step up and do something about it. Look, let's face it, a 19-year-old in Warwickshire can become the leader of the council. Probably that's because of all the Reform candidates, he's got the least skeletons in his cupboard just because of his age. That's my guess on the leader of Warwickshire Council. Ian McKenna, I was always an Ultimate Warrior fan, but he died of steroids, apparently. I don't know, did Hulk Hogan die of steroids? I mean, I imagine that guy was pumping some steroids, but I wouldn't last even a few minutes in politics. I have a horrible tendency to tell the truth, says Joanna Hammond. Well, the question is, if it's a choice between politics and WWE, which one would you last longest in? Both of them, a lot of money, a lot of power, a lot of influence. One of them, you are likely to get slapped in the face a lot more than the other. Anne Phillips, thank you for the £2 contribution to the swear jar. Wayne's still in the chat, so I may need more. He should have kept his shirt open and his mouth shut. Good point. You know, Hulk Hogan, my kids actually, when they were younger, were into WWE. And Hulk Hogan was this great cartoon character. You know, sorry, Wayne, again, to shatter your illusions, but WWE, it's all theatre. It's all laid on and made up. Sorry, guys, but it is. It's a theatrical sport, and my kids loved it. I think we even had Hulk Hogan action toys 30 years ago when they were into that stuff, basically. And to throw away that kind of affection is a bit crazy. Yes. So that, I reckon, is time for me to close. I think we may have got over the technical problems that I had yesterday. I really apologise for that. I had some amazing conclusions to make about how we save the NHS by taxing private healthcare. I will save that for another day. I may revisit that story at another time. I'm just going to read what Trip Trip says. Word on the street, and I'm quoting Trip Trip here, is that paramedics got there to stun Hogan back to life, but they waited 2 minutes for him to rip open his own shirt first. I'm sorry. That's good. Very good. Wayne tells me that he is getting in his Audi and heading south, which if he does that from where he lives in Basildon, he will drive through the Thames because there's no tunnel or bridge there, and hopefully come out the other side, although it is a convertible Audi. So I don't think his prospects of surviving that are very strong. So am I for it? No, I'm not for it, Wayne. Bring it on. I'm going to go now. Please enjoy whatever it is you're doing on this Friday. Join us tonight for Politics Social, which I'll be hosting for my sins. Please, anyone that wants to join, please join. Please like this video if you liked it. Please like this video if you didn't like it. Please like this video if you like Graham, or even like this video if you like Wayne. I know that's unlikely, but please do. And thank you very much for joining us, and I will see you later.